those out so that they can ask these questions. We've done over 100 of these. The language is always the same. The language was designed by David Greco, previous head of that firm.
Truck rides
Robert
along.
Martin. He's the
I
one
didn't
who
see the
designed
parking
it.
lot.
Well, there's a story. If you'd have been here just 5 minutes earlier, I'd tell you why the truck's not in the parking lot. As it is, you're going to have to wonder for 2
because
weeks.
everything's revealed.
Welcome to the Charter Township of Van Buren Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. At this time, I'm calling the meeting to order. Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, could we have roll call, please?
Here. Bernie Grant.
Here.
Peter Creel is excused. Medina Atchison. Here. Jackson Paul. Here. Jeff Jar.
Here.
Brian Cullen.
Here. Okay, I don't see any we've got approval of the agenda. We have the agenda before us. Is there any motion concerning?
Through the chair, I make a motion, we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
We have a motion to approve the agenda as presented with support. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, minutes. We also have the minutes of the regular meeting with us. Do I have a motion concerning the minutes?
Through the chair, I'll make a motion, we approve the regular meeting minutes of February 26, 2025 as presented.
Support.
We have motion and support for the approval of the minutes from the meeting of February 26, 2025. Any additions or alterations to the minutes? With that, all in favor signify by aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, I don't see any correspondence, no public hearing, or old business. We're on to new business. Item number 1. Case 24002, Costco East Cold Storage Edition at 5860 Belleville Road. A request by Ryan Hartsuff of MG2 on behalf of owner Costco Wholesale Incorporated to construct a 54,200 square foot cold depot addition with 2,700 square feet of office addition and related site improvements. The site is 5860 Belleville Road, parcel ID number 830139900027005. A 71.56 acre parcel on the west side of Belleville Road, south of Van Buren Road. The site is zoned M2, General Industrial District. We have a presentation by the township staff. Director Akers.
Thank you very much. I will turn this over to our planner, Ms. Vidya Krishnan.
Thank you, Director Akers. Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. The request before you, as you had summarized, is from Costco to construct a 56,565 square foot addition on the east end of their existing warehouse depot facility that is located on Belleville Road. The applicant appeared before you for a hearing and preliminary site plan approval on August 14th of 2024, which was granted by the Planning Commission, subject to several conditions. At this time, the applicant has completed engineering and is appearing before you for final site plan approval to demonstrate that they have met those conditions. I shall summarize those. The first condition was to submit semi-truck turning diagrams, which they have done, showing the pathway of trucks off Belleville Road in and throughout the site. They have clarified that the proposed addition does not increase any of the truck trips in and out of the site. The truck trips remain the same. This is just increasing more storage on the site. There was a lot of discussion with regard to strategies to ensure compliance with the conditions of the original special land use approval for the Costco site with regard to truck circulation routes, specifically that not just Costco, but their vendor trucks too, would not go south on Belleville Road beyond Ecorse Road. The route to be taken was Ecorse Road east to 275 south towards 94 west and so on, because Belleville Road is our core downtown and we did not want any trucks going down there. That condition was not necessarily being met, and the Planning Commission wanted Costco to take additional steps in order to address it. The applicant has since indicated that not only are they educating the drivers who are leaving the depot with flyers and educational material explaining where the truck routes lie. In addition to that, Costco has been working with the township administration on adding additional signage along the Belleville-Ecorse Road corridor as recommended by a DDA study that was done to help direct truck traffic better. That whole corridor is still under jurisdiction by Wayne County, so there are limited areas and limited amount of signage that can be placed without causing other problems. So Costco has been coordinating with township staff, with Wayne County, and a study that was already done by the DDA for this corridor and putting necessary signage in to help direct the truck traffic adequately. At this time, we believe all the steps taken are geared towards meeting the condition that was set forth by the Planning Commission. This will be monitored to make sure that the drivers are actually following that, but Costco, I think, has taken the steps necessary to accomplish that. Updated parking calculations were required. There were some errors in the parking calculations. The applicant noted that in their review letter that, yes, there were some corrections to be made on the final review. This is the final review. Those corrections were not there. It's a very minor correction, but we just want to point out that when they come for the west side addition, the numbers need to be accurate. We cannot, even if it's minor, these are final records for the site. We would like all the numbers to be an accurate read for the whole site. This is not something that makes any difference since they're not adding any employee parking, but it helps to have accurate counts of parking for the site. I defer to the township engineer for the stormwater detention, but it is my understanding that the applicant has already worked towards getting the necessary approvals from the township engineer at this time. With regard to rooftop mechanical equipment, there is a rooftop HVAC unit which is proposed for the proposed addition, and it will be screened from the neighboring property to the east, which is Bailoff, by a parapet. So it should not be visible from Belleville Road at all, and it should also be screened from the neighbor's property. At this time, all of the conditions of preliminary site plan approval have been met. So it is our recommendation that the Planning Commission grant final site plan approval for Costco Cold Storage, which is the east side addition to the existing facility located at 5860 Belleville Road, subject to the fire marshal and township engineer's approval. Thank you.
Mr. Kamer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. FishBec reviewed the plans as mentioned by Ms. Krishnan and compiled our comments in a letter dated February 13th, 2025. It should be noted at this time, FishBec examines and reviews the feasibility, the engineering aspects of the site. This site is, from an engineering aspect, is pretty minor as far as upgrades to the service, as this is an extension of the existing building on a site that previously had considered this expansion during its original design. So I'll go through the couple of aspects that we looked into. So the water main service, the applicant's proposal or proposed plan is to include a new 4-inch water service connecting to the existing 12-inch PVC water main that runs along the site, as well as connect to the existing private 10-inch existing fire loop for the new building. We have no comments on this. They're connecting to the sites per township, or to the water mains per township requirements. The sanitary sewer, similar to the water main, the sanitary sewer, the plan is a proposed 6-inch PVC sanitary sewer lead connecting to the new break room in the building expansion to the existing sanitary sewer service, similar to what is currently connected with the rest of the building. There were some utility crossings that we had looked at with the applicant, which have now been worked through with the applicant. And it should be noted, before I get too far, our letter dated February 13th, we did receive updated plans after this letter was sent to the applicant prior to this meeting, which many of these comments have been accounted for or addressed at this time. Which leads to the final and the biggest comment in our letter, which has been addressed, is part of the stormwater management system. Part of the system, or with this expansion, the applicant had taken into consideration the expansion of the building at the time of the original build-out. And during our review of the original plan submitted, there was a narrative, or there was an incomplete narrative that was submitted, dated May 15th, 2024. It didn't include all the information we were looking for to verify that the existing stormwater management system accounted for this building. Since that time, the applicant has submitted the updated narrative, which shows that the expansion was included in the original stormwater management plan, and thus we don't have any more comments on that stormwater management. So with that, Fishbeck recommends that the Planning Commission grant Costco East Cold Storage Edition final site plan approval, subject to, actually, I guess we don't have any conditional comments at this time because of the updated plans we have received. Happy to answer any questions anybody does have.
Thank you. Director Akers, do you have the fire marshal's report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The fire department wrote a letter dated February 26, 2025, where they indicated the status of the fire department site plan review is that the site plan has been approved. The fire department made specific comments that the fire lane access for the addition is an extension of the existing access, which exceeds the fire code requirements. An emergency vehicle access plan is not required for the project. And then the other comment that the fire marshal offers is that the water supply shown in the 8/14/2024 submittal is compliant with our township guidelines. So with that, they have approved the plan.
Okay, thank you. The applicant, do we have the applicant here?
Good evening. So the only other...
Could you identify yourself for us, please?
Yes, my name is Ryan Hartzuff, here on behalf of Costco with MG2. The only item I might add is that the hard copies that you have in front of you have been updated to address FIDGIA's comments regarding the parking counts and the employee counts for the facility with this addition.
Thank you. Commission, comments, discussion? Questions? Do we have anybody from the public that would like to make comments? Anyone from the public? Anyone? Okay, moving ahead. Do we have an action on this?
Through the chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Commissioner Grant?
I'd like to make a motion to grant final site plan approval to Ryan Hartsoff of MG2 on behalf of the owner Costco Wholesale, Inc., to construct a 56,565 square foot cold depot and office addition and related site improvements. The site is located at 5860 Belleville Road, parcel ID 83-013-99-0002-705, and it's a 71.84 acre parcel. The site is zoned M2, General Industrial District, and including and supported by or subject to the comments in the McKenna letter dated March 4th, 2025, the Fishbeck letter dated February 13th, 2025, and the Van Buren Township Fire Department letter dated February 26th, 2025.
Thank you.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Grant, supported by Commissioner Atchison. Do we have any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair, I think the motion made a reference to a 56,000 square foot cold depot addition. The agenda item says it's a 54,200 square foot cold depot addition.
Plus the office, so equals the 56.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Oh,
I
with
checked
it.
the plan, yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. That's all I wanted to know.
Okay. Any other comments, discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Jackson Paul. Medina Atchison.
Yes.
Bernie Grant. Sherry Budd. Jeff Jar.
Yes.
Brian Cullen.
Yes. Okay. You have your final site plan approval. Okay, item number 2 on the agenda tonight is case 25-005, Phantom Fireworks, Lakewood site, temporary land use. The applicant, Phantom Fireworks, is requesting a temporary land use permit to conduct temporary outdoor fireworks tent sale. The location is at 2095 Rosenville Road. The site is located in the Lakewood Shopping Plaza parking lot on the east side of Rosenville Road and on the south side of the I-94 South Service Drive. This activity is proposed from June 23rd to July 5th, 2025. With that, presentation from the staff. Director Akers?
Chairman, I will turn the presentation over to our planning and zoning specialist, Ms. Brittany Williams.
Thank you. Phantom of Michigan is requesting a temporary land use permit for tent sales of fireworks at Lakewood Shopping Plaza at 2095 Rossonville Road. The use is proposed to be from June 23rd through July 5th, 2025, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Per the zoning ordinance, temporary uses that operate more than 7 consecutive days require Planning Commission approval. In my review includes the adequacy of parking and access, adequate drainage, compatibility with surrounding land uses, size, height, and type of construction of proposed buildings and structures in relation to surrounding site, sufficient setbacks from road right-of-ways and lot lines, adequate utilities, trash disposal and site cleanup, sanitary facilities, hours of operation, outdoor light and signs, other licenses and permitted requirements, and permits required, potential noise, odor, dust, and glare, fire lanes, fire protection and securities, off-site impacts and traffic volumes, necessity of performance bond to ensure prompt removal, other concerns which may impact the public health, safety, and general welfare. My recommendation, this will be the 13th year that Phantom has operated at this location, and I am not aware of any complaints or issues that have taken place in the previous years. I recommend approval of this application subject to the following conditions. The use must maintain a minimum 75-foot front yard setback and 15-foot side yard setback as required in the C1 General Business District zoning district. All application materials shall reference Van Buren Township, Michigan as the municipality. And we also had the fire marshal review this as well, In his review letter dated January 23rd, 2025, he states he received the plan submittal on January 21st and found their application and site plan is compliant with the Van Buren Township adopted fire code, as well as state regulations for fireworks sales. The Van Buren Township Fire Department will conduct an on-site inspection to field verify compliance with the adopted fire code. The state of Michigan will conduct the required inspections per license requirements from the state.
Okay, thank you. At this time, do we have presentation by the applicant? Again,
My name's, who doesn't know me, my name's Richard Tapper. I'm the state manager for Phantom Fireworks. I've been doing this for 15 seasons since they became legal in the state of Michigan. As Brittany says, we've been at this location 13 seasons. We've had no incidents at all at the location. Actually, I do over 50 locations, and we've never had one incident at any of our locations any year, which is great, to hear. We moved the location last year from the back of the mall to the side mall, and it worked out pretty well for us where traffic could see us, instead of being in front. Again, I think we do everything properly and right. We clean up the area afterwards. Otherwise, Showstack wouldn't lease it back to us because they come and inspect it afterwards also on us because we have a deposit with them to make sure that we do everything properly. Questions?
okay, thank you. Planning Commission, commissioners, comments, questions?
Fire extinguishers are on the plan, always check.
Yes.
I did it this,
For you,
no, I did it this year too, just wanted you to know.
we changed all our sites to 3 about 5 years ago since you required that. So,
Anybody else, comments? Well, we're glad to see you back again. You have done a great job for us. With that in mind, is there any public comment? Public comment? Public comment, none? Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion concerning this item. Commissioner Grant.
I make a motion to grant temporary land use to Phantom Fireworks to conduct temporary outdoor fireworks tent sale located at 2995 Rawsonville Road in the Lakewood Shopping Plaza parking lot on the east side of Rawsonville Road and on the south side of the I-94 South Service Drive. Subject to the comments of the letters from Van Buren Charter Township dated February 4th, 2025, and Van Buren Township Fire Department letter dated January 23rd, 2025.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Grant, supported by Commissioner Jar. Do we have any discussion on the issue?
Mr. Chairman, I was hoping the motion could include that the activity is proposed from June 23rd to July 5th, 2025, if the commissioner doesn't object.
Okay. The motion has amended.
And support for that motion as well.
Anybody else? Comments or questions? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Medina Atchison?
Yes.
Jackson Paul?
Yes.
Jeff Jar?
Yes.
Brian Cullen?
Yes. So we got you for Lakewood.
we got you. Thank you. I'm staying put.
Okay. Case 25-008, Phantom Fireworks, Menard Site, temporary land use. The applicant, Phantom Fireworks, is requesting a temporary land use permit to conduct a temporary outdoor fireworks tent sale. Location is at 10010 Belleville Road. The site is located in the Menards parking lot, which is on the west side of Belleville Road, south of Tyler Road. This activity is proposed from June 23rd to July 5th, 2025. Presentation from the township staff. Director Akers?
Mr. Chairman, I will again turn the presentation over to our planning and zoning specialist, Ms. Brittany Williams.
Thank you. is requesting a temporary land use permit for tent sales of fireworks at the Menards parking lot at 10010 Belleville Road. The use is proposed to be from June 23rd through July 5th, 2025, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Per the zoning ordinance, temporary uses that operate more than 7 consecutive days require planning commission approval. My review includes adequacy of parking and access, adequate drainage, compatibility with surrounding land uses, size, height, and type of construction of proposed buildings and structures in relation to surrounding site, sufficient setbacks from road right-of-ways and lot lines, adequate utilities, trash disposal and site cleanup, sanitary facilities, hours of operation, outdoor light and signs, other licenses and permits required, potential noise, odor, dust, and glare, fire lanes, fire protection and securities, off-site impacts of traffic volumes, necessities of performance bond to ensure prompt removal, other concerns which may impact public health, safety, and general welfare. With my recommendation, this will be the 6th year that Phantom has operated at this location. I am not aware of any complaints or issues that have taken place at this location or Phantom Fireworks' other location in the Township Lakewood Shopping Center in previous years. I recommend approval of this application. And I do have the fire department letter here. Fire department letter is dated February 26, 2025, and states, I reviewed the plan submitted to my office of February 26, 2025, and found the application and site plan is compliant with the Van Buren Township Adopted Fire Code, as well as site regulations for fireworks sales. It is further understood that a permission slip from Menards will be made available before the March 12th Planning Commission meeting. The Van Buren Township Fire Department will conduct on-site inspection to field verify compliance with the adopted fire code. The state of Michigan will conduct the required inspections per license requirements from the state. And we did receive the letter from Menards yesterday, if anybody wants it, but it'll be in their file. Thank you.
Again, my name is Richard Tapper, State Regional for Phantom Fireworks. And just to clarify, when we say we're going to open from June 23rd to July 5th, some sites may not be open on July 23rd or 24th. It depends when we get inspected by the local and state fire marshals. Inspections start on the 23rd, they run to the 25th. So if a site doesn't get inspected to the 24th, they won't open up till then. We put those dates there, depending, we don't have the schedule set yet, but state usually does it within 3 days, on my sites, so just want to let you know.
Okay, fine, thank you. Public comment? I don't see any public comment. Seeing none, do we have any action, or planning commission discussion? Questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I will point out that the site plan has 3 fire extinguishers on it, as is required. I check it every year.
And my comment to that was just because they don't show them by the exits. And as you remember, Mr. Boynton was very on that they had to be at the exits, and it doesn't show it on this plan as them being in that place. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Actually, not by the couple are by exits, but like the water one is like in the middle of the tent. And they required to be attached to the tent pole. If we don't have a tent pole, we have a bucket that we set up and it's tied to. So the water one's in the middle. The other ones are on the ends. The powder ones are zip tied brackets on the ends to the tent.
Thank you.
They're by an exit. The tent has 3 exits. So again, a couple of them are by exits. The other ones are not.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Okay, then I would entertain some action on this item. Commissioner Grant.
I make a motion to grant temporary land use to Phantom Fireworks to conduct a temporary outdoor fireworks tent sale located at 10010 Belleville Road in the Menard parking lot, which is on the west side of Belleville Road, south of Tyler Road, and also subject to the Van Buren Charter Township letter dated March 4th, 2025, and the Van Buren Township Fire Department letter dated February 26th, 2025. And also noting the use is from June 23rd, 2025 through July 5th, 2025.
Wholeheartedly support.
We have a motion by Commissioner Grant, supported by Commissioner Jar. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Sherry Budd,
Yes.
Bernie Grant,
Yes.
Medina Atchinson,
Yes.
Jackson Paul, Jeff Jar,
Yes.
Brian Cullen.
Yes. Motion carries. We got you back again. Yes. You as well. Item number 4, battery, boy, I'm having trouble with my tongue today. Battery Energy Storage System Ordinance Draft. It's discussion. First off, presentation by staff. Director Powers.
Thank you. I will turn the presentation over to Ms. Vidya Christian.
Director Powers, I'm Christian. We are all, we are all tired.
Okay.
I've been calling all sorts of, I just called my son by my dog's name, and I was wondering why he was not responding, which didn't go too well. Sorry. So at the last meeting, the Planning Commission discussed and scheduled a public hearing for the battery energy storage systems ordinance amendment, because this is something that municipalities are receiving applications for, and we want to be planned for it. During the discussion, the Planning Commission raised some really good questions to which I did not have adequate research, so I went back and I looked it up. So 3 of the questions that you had asked me, so I brought back some information, and I would like the Planning Commission's guidance and how you would like to proceed with it. The first thing you had asked was, is there a minimum parcel size requirement for these BESS facilities? And Public Act 233, the one that actually regulates these BESS systems and wind and solar energy, it does not have any minimum parcel size requirement. It has got it for solar energy, because for solar energy, you need the area for the solar panels. So it sort of regulates how much land area you need, and then the state steps in and takes over. But for BESS systems, the Act does not really have any minimum acreage. So parcels can be as small as 2 acres or 10 acres. So that is a very important, the only thing that the state law basically includes is when you have large-scale BESS units which have a discharge capacity of 200 megawatts or more, under the Michigan Public Service Commission, the state takes over the jurisdiction of basically, all of their regulations tend to apply. We can still have our control by having green belts and all that, but basically the state oversees, their authority supersedes ours. So I wanted to know whether the Planning Commission would actually like to adopt minimum parcel size requirements, because the regulations we have, we are planning to have on our public is it's going to be allowed in the M1 and M2 districts. We have some smaller M1 and M2 zone parcels. These facilities are typically sited next to power lines, corridors, and grids. I don't know how many smaller parcels we have. We don't want to have a proliferation of these next to ITC corridors or power lines without realizing the smaller parcels might just be leased out to companies to put these BESS units on. If the Planning Commission would like to adopt a minimum parcel size so that you don't have too many of these facilities coming up all over the place. So that would be the first item for discussion. If I could get some guideline from the Planning Commission, what would your thoughts be?
Is there a maximum size?
No, there is no, and I couldn't find
So
anything.
you can't put a number on the maximum size, huh?
No. And I couldn't find anything in other communities. There aren't too many communities who have BESS facilities that have come up. There are few in Western Michigan. The only community that really seem to have robust regulations is Comstock Township. And they seem to have like regulating minimum size and all that. But in our case, I'm wondering, do we want to have like, we are allowing it in M1 and M2, most of our M2 parcels are really huge ones. But M1s, we might have a few smaller parcel sizes. I don't know if, Ron, would our GIS be able to look up and see what is the smallest size M1 or M2 parcels that we have that are still vacant? And based upon that, get an idea of where we might get these facilities to proliferate?
I'm agreeing with that, because my reaction is to say, because you say it, basically it's limited to where it goes, what it's adjacent to. So my reaction would be, let's look at the township and kind of take a look at where we believe that they would be sited.
Okay,
And then within those zones, identify the different, the different individual parcel sizes and see what they look like. So, I mean, you might be right, if there's a bunch of 2 or 5 acre parcels spread all over the place, is that something that we want to see? There's a lot of questions that might come out of that.
yeah, I'm not sure we have parcels that small, but then I'm wondering,
don't
even
know
if we
either.
have maybe 10 or 20 acre parcel, even is that too small? We don't want to have like bunch of shipping storage container parcels.
Right.
Ron, do you have any idea on that?
What I can do is I can talk to our JS tech and I can get a map made. I do know that there are properties that can be zoned M1 that are smaller and narrower in size. They're specifically along the Haggerty Road corridor. So there are some that are out there, but it's something that we'll map out. We can visualize for the Planning Commission at the public hearing in 2 weeks.
How much space does a 600 kilowatt hour BESS system take up? Because that is the break point, 600 kilowatt hour.
200 megawatt. Is that what you're?
No, how big, how much area do those take up? The,
I think when you're saying 600 kilowatt, though, you mean 200 megawatt, unless you're looking somewhere else.
So I'm not sure.
Well, they-
600 kilowatts. Where?
they're in containers, right?
Yes, but what
How
is the
many
600?
containers does it take?
The
Is it-
determination for it being a Tier 2 energy storage system in the proposed ordinance on section Article
Ah,
1.2,
okay.
Tier 2,
That's-
the
that's what
the
threw
break
me
point.
Thank you.
He's
That's what
correct,
threw me off. I was
600.
admitted.
Yeah, you're
Description
looking
for
at
the
this,
one.
the description of the state requirement, but our ordinance would have a break point at 600 kilowatt hours, so that's really the important number.
How many units would it take to generate 600 kilowatt hours? How many of those BESS units?
Yes, what type of area are those units going to take up? Would be a question.
You could work both sides. Yeah, how many units would it take to establish the smallest tier 2 facility? And what size land would that require? And then we can see where we have our M1s and M2s. And we could probably bring that information back to you at your public hearing. It shouldn't take much for you to then come up with the number, which we can always put into our ordinance at the public hearing.
I'd just like to see where it might go and make a decision on what we write into this based on that.
Right. The map will be very helpful, and also based on the 600 kilowatt hour, okay, how many units, how many storage container type units?
Mr. Chairman, I agree. It's probably a good idea to at least know what we're talking about in terms of lot size and where the where that break point is. But ultimately, I'm not sure it matters. If it's M1 or M2, we have M1 or M2 parcels. If someone wants to knock down an existing M1 business and put up a BESS, I mean, it doesn't have to be vacant parcels these go on, right? We're allowing it. So
Right.
it's not which parcels are vacant, it's, you gotta look at all the parcels, right? Because as soon as we do this, it's allowed by right, isn't it?
But apparently, it's limited to where they can go based on function.
Well, today it is, but maybe not tomorrow. Batteries get stronger every day, they get smaller every day. So I don't know that we would necessarily, I don't know how much it matters for us to look at a 600 kilowatt breakpoint and decide a parcel size when the batteries keep shrinking, you know?
No, technically, the BESS facilities are located next to either a grid or they have to be located next to a power line, because that's how they can, the surplus is stored from the grid. So I think the further they are located away from it, it makes it cost prohibitive. It loses its whole efficiency, the whole purpose of making it a BESS.
But it's a good question. How far away can they be located? Because if they could tie into the grid and they're far enough away and they're big enough, it might offset that cost.
How far away from a grid or power lines can a BESS be located?
Well, the thing is that like,
Function effectively.
Yeah, like if it, and again, if they were large enough, maybe they would go, large enough piece of land and they could just put a ton of them there. Maybe they'd be worth doing that and linking up to it. And would we want that? I don't know if we could stop it anyway.
I don't know why you want to stop it. I think it's not a bad use of what's already vacant M1 or M2 land, right?
I just think it depends on where it's at and what it looks like.
The
It's, to me,
intensity of the use is pretty low. Yeah?
The challenge is the intensity of the use by itself is low. The question is, this is not a use that can be made architecturally appealing, no matter what you attempt to do. It's shipping containers.
It would look like a bunch of shipping containers sitting on
There's
a
nothing you
vacant
can do
land,
about it.
and
It's
that's
just the
not-
innate nature of how it appears. It is what it is.
And
so.
over time, they rust probably, and they, unless they're maintained well.
Okay.
You can't have blight no matter what.
And we don't mention anything in here regarding screening. Is that like, no way?
It is there in the ordinance, Commissioner
Number
Hutchinson.
4?
Yeah,
the
if you look at the,
vegetation and cutting?
if you go further down, we say fencing, screening and visibility. It says it is subject to section 10.103, which is our landscaping and screening requirements. It's on page 3, and those are pretty sturdy requirements. Our landscaping requirements are some of the best.
Usually,
Then we will be able to screen it.
We
You
will be
think
able to screen it with like all the,
with all of the zoning adjacencies that our screening laws
Yeah.
have. So if you have an M2 that's somehow next to a residential district, it's gonna have the highest level of screening. If it's an
Yeah.
M2 next to another M2, it may not have hardly any screening at all. But who cares if one manufacturing facility wants to look at trucks? They already probably have truck trailers, so what's it
most
matter?
of our
Definitely.
M2s won't be challenging. Most of our M2s are located next to other industrial parcels. Our M2s by themselves are not challenging.
Right.
Our M1s are the ones that are going to be challenging because they're all invariably located next to some form of residential parcels, either single family or multiple family. And so the aim is to try to protect like you said, in terms of traffic or noise or fumes, it's definitely a low intensity use compared to some other trucking uses and stuff. It's more of a visual appeal. So there are two ways of, so in terms of acreage, so the points that we will get back is we'll get you a map to see what are the M1 and M2 sites. I mean, that we should be able to color code and we should be able to remove all the layers except the M1 and M2. Like you said, it's not just the vacant parcels. And we should be able to separate it by what is near power lines or grids. And then based upon how far away from a grid or power line can a BESS reasonably be located based upon today's technology.
Sure.
And also, how many of those BESS units would it take for a facility that generates a minimum of 600 kilowatt hour to be a basic tier 2 facility, minimum, smallest size? Okay.
How does this fit into like our overlay districts, like the Sumter Road Overlay District and the Belleville Road? Because we do allow light manufacturing in some of those.
It wouldn't be allowed because we don't have any M1 in any of our overlay districts,
Okay,
M1 or
we're-
M2.
You'd have to build them
Okay.
out of red brick.
Yeah.
We don't have M1 or M2 in any one of our overlay, B-Rod or Sumter Road, S-Rod, we don't have. it.
Okay, I didn't know because it's a mixed-use district, if it would fall under the light industrial type.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see how big it is, but I mean, from a screening standpoint, I think our zoning ordinance has screening built into it. What's the difference between looking at a shipping container mounted on a concrete pad or a shipping container that's at a truck dock? Those two parcels could be next to residential. They have screening for it anyway. It's supposed to be adequate. It's, the bigger concern that I would have is with noise, since these things run 24/7. You know, yeah, whereas the businesses may have hours of operation, these might have a constant hum. So it could be the case that you want to look at limiting them to small, keeping them away from the smaller parcels just as a noise management type thing. And so I could see that being a legitimate reason to look for
agree with that.
land size limiting,
This
but
is-
not screening.
So the ordinance actually says the average noise generated from the battery energy storage system and components and associated ancillary equipment shall not exceed a noise level of 60 decibels as measured at the outside wall of any non-participating residence or occupied community building. 60 decibels is pretty,
Yes, it's pretty noisy.
Pretty noisy.
At a wall of
Right.
a residence, walk out your
Yeah.
backyard and you hear that all day long and all night long. if it was intermittent, like what we had, I think it was the gas reclamation facility.
Yeah.
Remember we talked about that? And it's not a constant hum, and they said, well, it's intermittent.
Okay.
It's only occasionally, but I can imagine if it's 60 dBA all the time, 24/7, that could maybe be an issue.
Okay, so that'll make it important to also figure out where these parcels that are next to
Yeah.
the power lines and what the size of the parcel is. That might be a good dictating point too.
The point being that we have visual screening between a M district and a residential district, but we don't necessarily have sound screening.
Yeah.
And 60 decibels coming out of one M-zoned parcel, hitting another M-zoned parcel, who cares? Right? They're all they're all industry parcels. But if it's an M parcel that happens to be next to a residential parcel and we still have that 60 dB limit in there, that might be an issue because 60 dB, not loud in an industrial park. But man, if you're trying to sleep and you live next door to it, it could be loud. And that's something that normal screening isn't going to fix. That's the only reason I could think of why we might want to look at a size of the parcel.
And the interesting thing is that, good point, is that, combination of landscape to some degree, berming and architectural walls might do that, because it's typically about how it gets around over that wall, so there's usually height requirements to keep that.
Noise in.
Yep. So I think it's something.
So we should look at it.
Definitely.
To answer the question.
Which brings screening, which would tie into the next one, which is stacking. So there was a question is, can these BESS units be stacked? So the answer is yes. So the Public Act does not talk anything about stacking. They don't mention anything about stacking. But these units, typically, most of them are lithium-ion batteries, and they are containerized, so they can be stacked. So stacking depends on structural integrity of those container units itself, whether they comply with building codes. So basically, the state law differs to local municipalities. You decide whether you want them stacked or not. Like Comstock Township, which I previously mentioned, they just say no more than one shipping, no more than one container, you cannot stack it. They don't want height. So you can either regulate it saying if it's an M1, M2, it shall follow whatever the district height is. In our case, it is 30 to 35 feet, which means we will allow 2 units to be stacked one on top of the other, assuming they are sitting on a base grid. I'm sure they're not directly going to sit on the ground. They're going to probably sit on a metal frame or something. So that would be 2 units. Are you okay with stacking of units? Because if we allow based on underlying zoning, I'm thinking it's going to be 2 units stacked. Or do you want something like it shall be individual single units? The one concept plan that Ron and I saw showed only individual units. It did not show any stacking. But it's up to you. Stacking provides for more efficient, compact sites where you can get more of these units in, but it also makes them much taller, and no tree is going to go up to the height of these units. You're talking about 30, 35 foot tall. A tree at the time of planting is 6 feet to 8 feet. It's never going to get to that height.
As it gets taller, it's gonna get louder, I would imagine, because.
Especially
the
when it
berm-
backs up to some residential, I would not want to see them stacked.
Plus in summer when the
Especially
windows
if
are
they
open,
had-
yes, up in the air.
Yeah,
you're
maybe
right.
6 units all stacked, that wouldn't be good to look at, because there's no way you're going to be able to hide those residential areas from that.
I don't think it's unreasonable to say you shall have only single units, because that'll, with the frame, you're going to have a height of 18 feet. Even when your trees are planted or with a berm, I think visually you'll only see the top of the container, which shouldn't be as bad, and the trees will help. You're right, if they're stacked up, the trees are going to do nothing for the noise, because the second unit is going to be completely in the open.
It's gonna look like shipping container yards, right?
Yes.
It's not, there's nothing pretty about these things. I mean, you paint them white, you hope they stay that way, or blue, or something to blend in, but essentially, they are shipping containers.
I'm just
in the
hoping
open
that we can
space.
screen them enough.
That's the key, is
You
the
know, and
screening.
keep them low enough that we're not amplifying the noise, because Commissioner Jarsh seems to know what 60 dBA is. I have no idea how loud that is, but I just don't want it next to a
So
residence.
70 decibels would be a vacuum cleaner.
Oh, boy.
Like you're using the vacuum
boy.
cleaner,
Vacuum
right?
Running on
all
full
the
is a
time.
70 decibel. And so 60 decibel is just slightly.
60 decibel at the property border. So that's, the vacuum cleaner could be running in the middle of the parcel,
And
you know,
then
but it
say
sounds like
6
you're
of
standing
them
on
are
the border,
in
it sounds like a
them.
vacuum cleaner going. 60 dB
It's
is,
probably 55 decibel or something, so
Yeah.
that'll be loud.
And then you put them all together,
Yeah, then
Cumulative
that's
effect
right.
of sound might also be
is that
there.
is there a multiplier?
Altogether, you're still not allowed to exceed the sign,
60,
the
yeah.
amount of 60 dB, right? So it's not quiet, but it's not like, I mean, it's not like them doing the jet engine testing at the airport. That's insanely loud, right? But
Might be a collective hum, like a constant hum.
so the stacking thing, what we already have in the industrial districts is a maximum building height. And
Yeah.
that building height can be as high as it can be, whether it's next to another industrial site or whether it's next to a residence. If it's another industrial site, if you're in an industrial site, you already have shipping containers and you're already doing shipping and manufacturing, doesn't matter if you're looking at a bunch of shipping containers next door. Whether they're stacked or single layer, I don't think it really matters that much industrial to industrial. But residential to M, that's different because the maximum building height, we still have requirements on what a building should look like, and it ought to look like a building. But these things stacked up to the height of the building, they will look like shipping containers stacked up, and maybe that's a problem.
Industrial districts, we don't allow you to stack shipping containers. You have an
You
outdoor
don't get to
storage,
store 'em, right.
maximum height 14
Maximum height
feet.
for the storage limit. And so maybe that ought to apply here because these look like shipping containers. Maybe the requirement ought to be the same as for outdoor material stacking or shipping containers, or make those things not look like shipping containers. If they looked like an industrial building, if they had a wall around them like an industrial building, I don't know that I'd care.
So we did add in over here, based upon our discussion, because we don't know if any architectural improvements we require of these structures is going to affect their functionality, because
It's too new.
yeah, it's too new a technology. Put something on the outside, is it going to affect the integrity of the lithium ion on the inside? I don't know. So we added, to the extent feasible and reasonably practicable, the storage units must incorporate architectural features that will harmonize with the character of the property and surrounding areas and not interfere with the ventilation and exhaust ports. It's on page 3 of the original BESS ordinance. We did add that in. So we want them to make their best effort. If they can't do it, they need to explain to the planning commission why they can't do it. They can't say, well, this is what we make and this is what we shall. If they say they cannot make it, they need to explain to you, like, these are the reasons why it cannot be done, because the stuff inside will not function then. The technology is too new, so we don't want to put something in the ordinance that is like, yeah, no, you can't do that, I don't want to stretch. So in this case, I'm thinking at this time, based upon what we know, I would like to suggest that we limit stacking to no more than 1 unit. That'll be 1 shipping container, and it's going to be on a frame. It's not going to sit on the ground because they don't put the lithium ion directly on the ground itself.
Yes, I think that's good because what we also use, we're talking about next to M2, one industrial building next to another. But we also have requirements on those buildings on their visibility from the road. So we have to be aware over the public right-of-way. I think that needs to be taken into account for these as well. So that as you're driving by, you're not seeing a bunch of shipping containers, because we don't allow that for the most part for the industrial buildings that are in manufacturing buildings that are in existence now.
We generally expect them to put all their storage, and even Costco, all their shipping containers, everything are in the back. You can't see them from any of the roads. Or Ashley's, all their trailers, everything are on the sides and the back. We don't allow them to place them where they can be seen from any public rights of way.
Well, we
So-
had the one, when I first started on the commission, we had the situation over on Haggerty Road where they were increasing the storage back there, and we made sure that that storage was contained behind the buildings and not allowed to be seen in the front of the building. And those are shipping containers as well, to some extent.
So for stacking, we will make it single unit only. The third thing was, the question was raised, can large data centers have BESS units as a backup power source? And the answer is a resounding yes. Because unlike traditional generators, which take time to fire up in the event of power loss, BESS units come on instantly. The moment power goes off, the BESS unit will kick in. So data centers, for them, it is critical. You cannot have the system shutting down. The BESS unit will immediately kick in. So apparently, most large data centers, there's a lot of capital investment that goes into set up these BESS facilities. They don't want to spend their own money setting this up, so they just rent these BESS units. They rent 1 or 2 BESS boxes, and they keep it for their data center. So I think we should definitely include these. So the question is, it's going to be, they are using it no different than a generator. So are we going to treat it as mechanical equipment, or are we going to treat it as an accessory structure?
I think you treat it for what it is.
What is it?
Well, it's not an accessory structure, because you
It is
can't
not.
occupy it.
But it would be.
Be same as US Signals. US Signals has got these massive generators on the side. It's a data center.
It's the same as the diesel generator. They're about the same size. They go in the same
Generators on the
place.
side. So it's
an
mechanical
accessory,
equipment. We
mechanical
still
accessory.
require screening by fencing and landscaping, cannot be seen. So I'll put it in as mechanical equipment. Okay.
Question, just a general question, and that is, these are lithium-ion storage cells, battery cells?
Sometimes.
Does any?
Sometimes they're LiPo. The chemistry is different.
Okay, so the question is anyone familiar with how flammable they are? And if they are flammable, how toxic the flames are, or the off-gassing, or, I'm just thinking relative to busy areas or neighborhoods. If you have a field of these and they go boom and they all catch fire,
They're
I know.
usually safe enough that you can put them inside a building. So data center backups, you can have rooms full of batteries.
That's a data
right?
center, though.
Yeah, but it's the same battery. It's the same thing.
The thing is, it's not typically an occupied space.
Yeah, it is.
One Energy,
Question
they
for the-
manufacture lithium-ion batteries. That's what they manufacture.
I'm
So
just saying,
of the technologies, I believe lithium-ion is, considering the technologies for various chemical batteries that they have, lithium-ion is considered the safer. That said, it is still chemicals, and they have to follow all the protocols for whatever the safety regulations and everything are. And that's, once again, I think the state law sets forth what and all safety precautions they must take. Public Act 233, it's got this whole.
that we're aware of what we're dealing with, in case there is something that happens, which, however remote it might be, that somebody doesn't come back and ask that question, didn't you realize? We got to have the answer to it, I think. I mean, I just read real quick. Lithium-ion batteries store a lot of energy, and I'm just saying, this is not me, in a small amount of space. When the energy is released in an uncontrolled manner, it generates heat, which can turn certain internal battery components into flammable and toxic gases.
Yeah.
That's why we have a fire marshal, and that's why we have fire building codes. They can't go and build a battery energy system without taking into
But I
account
know
the fire
building codes, and I know what building codes from the fire side are meant to do. I'm just talking about this is it's fairly new technology, so I'm just saying, I think we just need to be careful in knowing what we're dealing with.
We are adopting these regulations because if we don't, then the state is going to say,
know.
okay, we get to make all the calls. We don't want the state to be able to make all the calls.
I'm wondering if separation from certain sort of sensitive areas there needs to be a greater distance.
In fact,
Rather
by,
than being 40 feet away from somebody's home or a commercial center that has a lot of people in it.
So so the University of Michigan published a manual for these battery energy storage systems were in relation to the energy siting law, and so they put together a group of local experts. There's a whole section where it talks about the risk of fire, explosion, and gases. I guess I'll read a section of it if you guys are okay with that. Might take me a hot second, but it does address a lot of it. So it says the safety of lithium-ion BESS is a common concern, especially given reports of failures that have drawn public attention. However, these incidents have also driven the industry to improve its understanding of failure mechanisms and develop more robust mitigation measures, codes, and standards. As BESS technology rapidly advances, so does the knowledge of its safe operation, with modern systems being significantly safer than those produced just a few years ago. The primary safety challenge with lithium-ion BESS is the risk of thermal runaway, a process where excessive heat builds up in the battery, leading to an uncontrolled self-sustained chemical reaction resulting in rapid release of energy. Thermal runaway can result from overcharging, mechanical damage, physical impact, manufacturing defects, or improper design or operation. While BESS do not emit gases during normal operation, thermal runaway can cause a battery cell to rupture and vent flammable gases such as hydrogen, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and hydrocarbons like methane and propane. When plastics and other equipment in the BESS burn, toxic fluorine gases may be released. To mitigate these risks, BESS manufacturers, integrators, and developers takes extensive precautions to prevent thermal runaway and contain it to a single cell or battery enclosure if it does occur. The preferred firefighting strategy is to allow the fire to burn out, to fully expel stored energy, while focusing on containment and defensive firefighting, like wetting the ground surrounding the fire. The physical construction of the enclosure makes it challenging for water to effectively cool the cells. Water can create complications with runoff. This is why the industry focuses on containing rather than extinguishing. The National Fire Protection Association Standard 855 for the installation of stationary energy storage system provides comprehensive guidelines for the safe installation and operation of all scales of BESS. Compliance with the standard is a requirement for all large BESS projects that are permitted by the Michigan Public Service Commission or through compatible renewable energy ordinances. It includes requirements for stress testing, spacing between components, and collaboration with local emergency responders. And then there's some other sections where it talks about UL requirements and all that. But it says local jurisdictions can enhance safety by requiring compliance with the latest edition of NFPA 855, requiring detailed safety plans and report during project approval, and involving local emergency response officials in fire and emergency response planning. Regular training for emergency responders is essential to prepare for any incidents. And these suggestions are incorporated into, they had some sample zoning regulations that they put together with this manual. So it looks like it's considered in NFPA 855, and we'll verify that our codes are up to date with that.
So is the container maybe supposed to contain if there is such a leak or fire? Do we know that piece?
That's my understanding.
Reason not to stack them, you know, would support that.
I believe the containers are designed so if there is a chemical reaction, it's fully contained. I think that's what Ron was reading out. So water cannot really get in. They let everything just burn out within itself.
Sounds like a lot of the codes focus on adequate separation distances
And that's
that
why
type of stuff.
That's why no shrub or plant can be within any of the surroundings of the individual BESS units. All the bottom has to be gravel. They are placed on raised metal crates so that there is no leaching. So the ground on which all these BESS units are kept is completely barren. It's fully gravel or stone. They are all raised metal racks. So all the landscaping is on the periphery of it to screen it from view. But within it, it's completely bare.
Through the chair. So going back a little bit, I do have a question. What is stopping someone from thinking about this as an accessory structure? Where do we draw the line between like, oh, that's just backup generation versus, or that's backup versus, you know, a large scale site that has 10 or 15 of them on there? Like, is that something we can say you're considered an accessory structure with no more than, like, is that, one, is this already addressed in PA 233? And two, would we be able to say you're allowed one or you're allowed two on site before it becomes something else?
At what point does it go from being an accessory use to a primary use?
Right.
Right, that's the question. If I have an existing M1 parcel and I've got a little tiny tool and die shop on it, but I've also got acres going into the back, do I have to knock down my tool and die shop? Can I just stack 25 or 30 of these things going into the backyard?
Right.
And, oh, those are all just accessory use to my work from my office, you know, or whatever.
So you just addressed that previously when you told me that you're going to treat this as mechanical equipment.
Right.
So a tool and die shop really has no need for a BESS at all. So if they propose even a BESS for a tool and die shop, no, you're just getting a proper diesel generator where you're pulling your.
Well, we don't have anything that says they can do that, right? I mean, as long as it's under 600 kilowatts.
So that'll become automatically, as long as it's, a tier 1 energy storage system basically can go in anywhere. Under state law, it can go in anywhere in any zoning district. But the moment it hits the tier 2, the tier 2 can be used as mechanical equipment in these larger, whatever these larger data centers have, the bigger units, those are the tier 2 units. They're not the tier 1. Tier 1 is what we would have in our house. for those backup generations, the smaller units, which a mom and pop shop could also use. But the larger ones that rent an individual unit, it would still be a mechanical equipment piece. It wouldn't be an accessory use, it wouldn't be an accessory structure.
So the best place to build my battery energy storage farm would be on a parcel that already had a small existing business, because then my primary use is that small existing business, but I could stack 35 of these Besses up behind it and claim it was an accessory use to my tool and die shop, store power all day, and then sell it back as if I were a Bess, but none of the rules would apply because I had a building on site. Is that something we want to maybe consider?
Well, I guess the only question I would ask related to that is, I mean, we have very specific definitions for accessory uses in the zoning ordinance, and it claims that they have to be, you know, definitively accessory and incidental to the existing use on the property. So if we have, and maybe this is more of a question, because I don't know, if we have a series of shipping containers that generate way more electricity than the little building will ever use, I mean, I feel we could probably make an argument that's definitely not accessory or definitely not incidental to the existing
feel
use
more
on the
like
property.
storage to me.
Although,
But wouldn't, once they hit the 600 kilowatt in the combine, put them into a tier 2 and force them into a,
It becomes a principal permitted use then. It becomes a principal use on the property. There's nothing preventing a principal use, two principal uses on a property on an industrial, but then they have to go through the entire site plan and conditional land use approval and meet all of the standards of this district. You can have a mom and pop shop and you can have those 25 best units, but you're still following the conditional land use approval for a tier 2 facility for the whole thing, whole 9 yards. As long as you meet all of the standards of the ordinance. There's nothing in the zoning ordinance that says, like in single-family residential districts, you can have only one dwelling on a property, but there's nothing in an industrial district that says you shall have only one industrial use on a property. You can have two industrial uses on a property. That's what an industrial complex essentially is, right? You can have multiple industrial buildings. For example, Ashley, Building 8, Building 9, you have multiple industrial buildings there.
So if you did have a business and you had, why would you need 25, wouldn't you have to justify what's beyond your needs as a part of the?
He just has to,
Having two different businesses then. Essentially, you don't, if you're saying 25, you only need one of these units versus 25, and you're only having 25 to generate revenue by pumping energy back onto the grid, that's two separate businesses.
yes, it is a separate business, and then
And
you
you're
have to
saying you
follow
can have
the-
two separate businesses on one site?
You can. You can. You just have to follow the whole conditional land use approval process, the whole thing for a tier 2 facility.
Which means now that it's still equipment, so that they're gonna have to screen it properly.
Yes, they'll have to do the whole
Wh-
thing,
which
every
is-
single thing
yeah.
that's required of this.
Yeah. Kinda works, kinda, that's all. Is that the cutoff? What is the cutoff as far as total of these units before it goes to a tier 2?
That's exactly the question
Because is
Commissioner
it-
Cullen asked, how many units
Or is it 50?
do you
I don't know.
need
I
to
don't
trip
know.
it into 600 kilowatt plus? What is the minimum number of units needed to make it a tier 2 facility? So that's what we need to look into.
so I know Ms. Williams did a calculation on her phone based on some of the information we found on Google. If you want to,
It says that a 20-foot container can store 3.7 of it, and so it'd be roughly like 162 storage containers.
ooh,
It's a lot. I thought 25 was a lot.
162 storage containers to become a tier 2 facility?
That's what it said.
Something doesn't sound right.
It seems like
Because
a
I know
lot.
tier 2 facilities can have as less as 15 to 20 containers. Are we talking about megawatts or are we talking about a number
Kilowatt
larger
hours.
than that? Maybe a unit larger than that.
It's 3.7 megawatts in a 20-foot container. Maybe it didn't
Kilowatts. Here
calculate
we are
right.
talking
Hold
about
on.
600 kilowatts.
kilowatt hours
Kilowatt
is,
hours.
which
It's
is,
a different unit of measure.
right. It's the rate at
It
which it's
didn't-
being used.
I'm not going to do physics or mathematical calculations.
Not sitting right
I'm
up here
not
at the
going to try
board
to-
anyway.
Numbers there. Give her a sec.
When I did it off of that and didn't transfer it.
Well, she's underneath the major power lines that we have that run through the township. Can anything be built underneath those?
ITC corridor, no. As far as I know, they only allow farming. I stand corrected. The ITC corridor that runs east-west through Ashley Crossroads South,
Uh-huh.
ITC gave them permission to do trailer parking. They gave
So-
Ashley permission to do trailer parking. They got site plan approval from us because ITC granted them permission to do that, which was very surprised, but they did.
See, offer for one of these storage units to be built underneath them?
No, so it might only need one.
Was the question?
Can ITC allow for a BESS facility to be located within their ITC corridor? Can it be located within the power line corridor itself?
Would they rent?
Got
I can't believe they would rent out property for somebody else to build something.
Correct. I mean, it's for profit, right? BESS facilities are for profit private entities, so.
And we live next to them, and we used to farm them, and they became very particular about what you did and when you did it and how you did it and what the neighbors on the other side were gonna say. So I can't believe they would rent property out for somebody to put 5 or 6 storage units on it.
I mean, I do know that some of the utility companies, like I know there's a project in Trenton right now for the old DTE coal plant where they're going to be putting these battery energy storage systems on the former coal plant site as well. So DTE, from what I understand, DTE is going to be owning and utilizing those as well. So, you know, maybe ITC could put their own in there.
And what brings that up, those ITC corridors do run by residential areas, very close at times. And if we're talking about decibels and the constant hum that's gonna come out of those, that's gonna go right along residential areas. Is that gonna come before us as far as allowing these to happen?
And I can't see that they would let you plant trees around them too.
Yes, that will take it out.
No way can you plant
ITC
anything in there that goes.
They will not allow you to plant trees or vegetation in any one of their corridors. That was the thing they told us when Ashley's trailer storage was going in. And the only reason Ashley was able to go is Ashley owned property on both sides. And they planted all the buffers on their properties on either side of ITC. So ITC was, as long as the trees are on your property, and ITC was right in the middle. So Ashley doubled up the buffers on their property. And that's how they met the ordinance standards. That's how they got around that portion of it. But yes, they are not going to be able to meet. Plus, we will require hefty fencing. We require fencing, we require berming, we require landscaping, all of which Public Act 233 allows us to do. ITC wouldn't allow all that within theirs. I know the only thing I've seen them allow so far is farming and this trailer, basically trailers sitting over there. But we will look into that. It is an interesting question, but I can't see them allowing fencing and trees being planted.
It was just a question because they run real close to my house, the ITC corridor that goes north and south. So, and it goes right by yours as well, yes.
The ITC corridor not being buildable is one of the main reasons why the MT Industrial Transportation District was even created, because that 500-foot buffer provided protection to all the single-family homes, because we knew nothing could ever be built within that area, and that alone would provide protection for all those homes. So, no, we don't want anything there. Okay, so I have answers to the stacking and the accessory structure, the parcel size, and the I'm going to draw and try and get this mapping thing done, and the ITC corridor is interesting, but I'm pretty sure, like Sherry says, they're not going to allow you to plant trees and fencing, but always good to double check and make sure it's not being done somewhere.
call out for when we're considering energy storage systems as a primary use, the business is storing energy and shipping it off for later. And battery energy storage as an accessory use, when DTE shuts the power off, my business still keeps running off of these generators. They store energy and I ship it back to DTE when the rates are right, but that's not my primary business. My primary business is keeping my industry running.
Correct.
And so if we had something in there that called out specifically these best rules, we really are targeting them at primary energy storage businesses, right?
Correct. It's
Yeah.
the same as solar panels, right? People who get solar panels put on their rooftops, the solar energy lights up your house or provides energy to you. But if your house generates surplus power, you sell it back to the grid, right? To DTE. That's what you do. That's how your energy bill goes down. I think BESS is no different than the concept is no different. So I'm not sure where we would put in.
So here's how I think it's different. If I have solar panels on my house and I'm pulling energy in and I'm storing in a battery in my garage and I'm using it for when DTE doesn't deliver me power, it's not an if, y'all live here, right? That's solar panels as an accessory use to me living in my house. I might be making pretty good money selling solar energy back to DTE, but that's not the primary use. The primary use is to keep the power on in my house. If I were to get a residential parcel, it's not going to happen, but if I were to get a residential parcel, not put up a house, but cover the whole place in solar panels and use that, I'm not powering a house. All I'm doing is sucking up energy, storing it in a battery and sending it back to DTE. That's battery energy storage as a primary use, and that's
Correct.
different, right?
Correct.
So I think it maps to the industrial zones as well. If you're a business and you've got several of these shipping containers set up in lieu of having diesel generators, yeah, you might be pulling power in and you might even be selling it back and you might be making some money on these BESSes, but that's not your primary business. Your primary business is what you're building in the manufacturing facility or in the industrial facility. If you come along and buy an M2 parcel and all you put down are these storage containers full of electricity and batteries, and you don't have any other business other than pulling storage in and energy in and storing it and then shipping it out when the rates are more amenable, that's definitely a primary use for battery energy storage system. And I think it might make our ordinance clearer to the average business owner. All I want to do is put in some battery backup. Why do I have to read all this BESS business? If they're just a business, it's an accessory use. That's not what we're trying to regulate. That's not what we're trying to protect our community from. It's the energy storage as a primary business. That's where we start to think, oh man, you could have 1,000 of these things and then it becomes a problem. So I think it might be important to make a clear differentiation between as a primary use and as an accessory use. It might help us out a lot.
The only question I had, and that makes sense, how would you determine whether it's a primary use or not?
The ordinance clearly has got in the definition section what constitutes an accessory use. It's very specific at what point of trigger a use is an accessory use versus a principal use.
That's in the general ordinances.
Yes, in the general uses, section
zoning
2.0.
ordinances, yeah.
Do you know roughly what it says? I don't know.
Go look it up. I don't know what it says.
I mean, is it dollars? I mean, the only thing I can think of is you can put a shed up and say, hey, I sharpen knives, but I have 25 BESS units. Which one's my primary business?
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at with the how do you know what the break-even point is? How do you know when it's an accessory versus a primary? If I want to build as a primary use a BESS system, but we put in a bunch of ordinances that make it difficult, what's going to happen is someone's going to buy a building that has a knife sharpening business, and they're going to throw BESS units in the back and get around our ordinance.
Would this cover it, what we currently have in the ordinance? So basically, Tier 1 is defined as Tier 1 battery energy storage systems have an aggregate energy capacity less than or equal to 600 kilowatt hours. And if in a room or enclosed area consists of only a single energy storage system technology. They are primarily for residential use and can fit within a single room or dedicated storage area. And then the ordinance goes on to say, Tier 1 battery energy storage systems shall be permitted in all zoning districts as accessory uses, subject to the Michigan Building Code and National Electric Code as applicable. Does this cover the fact that if somebody has got a small, like, business and they want to have a room with just these best things,
Yeah.
would that cover what you're trying to say, Commissioner Jar?
I don't think it does. First, because having that number at 600 kilowatt hours is, battery technology improves every year. The density gets higher and higher, and the amount of space that you can store electricity in gets smaller basically every year, right? So putting in that hard number as the break point, it's like guaranteed to be wrong in 10 years, right? Is what I'm thinking. But
But that break point is what is established by the state of Michigan.
Yeah.
so I don't think it does, because I think businesses will, like, if you're gonna have a couple of these things as generators, you're already doing battery energy storage, right? And odds are very good if you have these things installed on your site with your existing industry, you're gonna be taking energy and you're gonna be selling it back. It is a BESS system, right? That's how they work. They take energy in, they send it back out. The question I have is when do you know whether or not the building is, the primary use is we make car headlights here and we have electrical backup versus, yeah, I really don't have anything in this little building, but I have 10 times the amount of power in the back that really supports my industry. Really what it is it's a BESS system. It's a big energy storage system, but it's getting around our tier 2 rules because it's being called an accessory use instead of a primary use.
Can I ask a question? Businesses are constantly evolving, you know? Like, is there something wrong with a business starting out as the knife sharpening example and then diversifying into an additional business where now I'm sharpening chainsaws? I don't know. And then now we have more and more batteries. You know, every business seems to evolve into additional things as the technology expands. Is there something wrong with that?
No, of course not. That's what we're going for.
I'm just trying to like figure out what are we trying to stop? Because the definition that video.
So I think what Commissioner Jar is trying to say is we don't want somebody to put in a BESS facility by bypassing the rules by putting a front as a knife sharpening business.
That's what I'm
So basically, a BESS guy is going to come in, he wants to bypass this whole process, he's going to say, I'm having a little knife sharpening business. Basically, it's a BESS facility with a front. We're trying to avoid that. So, but we want to have provisions over here where somebody with a facility such as a knife sharpening or a chainsaw or even other tool sharpening should have the ability to have these BESS units to make their business better without having a BESS guy trying to use them as a means. So it's actually trying to support business growth without letting
Right.
them get away with what they're trying to do.
That's exactly right. I want the little guy with the knife shop to be able to put in his power backup. I don't want someone to say, I want to build a power distribution system. I guess I'd better buy a disused knife shop. Right. Right?
I know where you're getting with this. I'll come up with some language
Okay.
too.
Okay.
I know
cool.
what
The
you're.
minute it reaches 600 kilowatt hours, it no longer is an accessory
And that could be a
product,
problem.
isn't that?
Yeah, that could be a problem.
I mean,
for a
these
business.
people all keep adding and adding, but once they reach that 600 kilowatt hour, they become a
Triggers,
tier
automatically
2.
the state says that they are a tier 2 now.
And then they have to fall under our ordinance for this. Okay.
Ms. Williams, did you crunch the numbers over there? And if you did, can you please report out?
So when I did it the first time, it did pull it up in the megawatt hours.
So we're no longer at 162 containers. Okay, good.
Off of this, it says, now this is just what Google says, so don't quote everything I say. 1 megawatt hour unit often housed in a 20-foot container can store 3.7 megawatt hours, which converts into, it can store roughly 3,700 kilowatt hours. So it would actually only take one of the 20-foot container to qualify for the tier 2.
To be over the 600. Right, and then we have a problem if you want to replace your data store backup, you don't want to have a diesel generator, you want to have one of these vests in here, suddenly you can't do it. Now we've just shut down a business that wants to have power backup. That's why, that was my concern about that 600 number.
I read they come in different capacities too.
Yeah.
It depends on what you buy, because it could be two of them versus, or four versus one. I mean, just depends on the size, because that's what I read too. They were given an example, but it was a lesser capacity one, and then it worked out to being like 12 units. So it just depends.
Maybe it's a 4-foot
I don't know what the size.
box is, or
But you
8-foot.
understand, you do understand what I'm getting at. I don't want someone to be able to end run. That's my only
To
concern.
get a massively red-lined amendment back. Okay, okay. I know what are all the questions with this. Okay, I've got to look into what the state law also says with this, and based upon it, if one BESS unit alone is enough to trigger it into tier 2, and then we are going to call it accessory, then, I mean, are we preventing somebody from using one as a backup generator? If they're going to have just one BESS unit as a backup generator, are they now a tier 2 facility? That's not what we're trying to do. That wasn't our intent to, say somebody has got a whole bunch of chainsaw or this whole bunch of a small industrial operation and they doing welding. They want to have a BESS unit over there. Suddenly they're a tier 2 operation, which is not what it
Not
was
what we wanted. And
intended for.
Commissioner Grant brought up an interesting point. The containers may have different sizes of batteries crammed into the containers. I don't really care how much power they cram into the container. I can't see that. What I can see is the container itself. Right? So having the cutoff be at some amount of storage might not be the right, amount of electrical storage measured in kilowatt hours, might not be the right metric. It might be the number of containers you have on your site. If you're a business and you have 2 of those containers on site, 2's fine. It's when you say, I'm gonna bring in 200 containers, forget about how much power each one has, 200 containers, that's where we start thinking that that's maybe a problem. We have to visually screen it. You need access roads. It's the number of containers, not necessarily the amount of
The
power
power
per container.
generated, okay.
Definitely, yeah.
So,
We are concerned more about the noise and the visual impact than the amount of power that is being stored in these containers, because these units can get more compact and store more power for all we know. Okay.
and as we've been talking about this, I've been going through this U of M manual that I had read from earlier. The way the manual differentiates between them is rather than utilizing them by the amount of electricity they generate, they just classify them as on-site and off-site. So if it's an on-site facility, it's used for the existing business or the existing use that's on-site. And if it's considered an off-site facility, it's selling power back to the grid, essentially.
that's a good-
So, I mean, I don't know, we could look at it or talk about it, or,
Might have to rewrite this thing.
sorry.
Now, are we,
Oh, the ordinance has to be effective. I mean, writing an ordinance that defeats the whole purpose of how effective these BESS units can be. The intent is not to prevent somebody from using. If this can be like a backup generator, why not? But if half a container can end up making it into a tier 2 facility, that's not the intent. This draft basically was designed based upon a couple of communities were supposed to be the path breakers for new ordinance regulations. So I looked at several communities, and these were supposed to be the best in terms of definition. That's where I went. I guess they were not the best. So I will come up with something else.
You're gonna come up with the best.
You know.
I will come up with, like, I think what Ron is suggesting based upon the on-site, off-site. In fact, the best manual that Ron is referring to, I was one of the people who well, before it was published, but I was involved in the setbacks, the screening, those portions of the manual I reviewed for the original authors. I wasn't involved in the size and the actual things, but that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay.
while we're looking at this real quick, question, on a tier 1 system, do we have any control over where they put that system in a home?
I think the building code dictates it, just like for electric car chargers and all where the charging port is. I think the building code has got regulations that dictate where that can go in.
Okay,
And how it can be hooked up.
Yes.
yeah, okay.
I think DOT has also fire safety also regulates that.
Fire and
Placement,
electrical.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is probably a dumb question, but if I got a gun, or if I've got a knife sharpening place here, and I've got all these containers are back here, because I'm collecting this energy that I'm gonna put back on the grid. So somehow I'm wired into the grid. Are they also gonna let me wire in to do backup if power fails in my business? That doesn't seem, that doesn't seem right to me.
Sounds like double dipping to you?
Yeah, I mean, you're allowed to use what you have, and you're also selling it back to the grid kind.
Are they gonna let me be hooked up both ways?
That's no different than solar.
They do it with current solar. So my house is set up that way.
Okay.
It's a transfer switch. If the power feeding the building goes off, the transfer switch throws the generator or the batteries, power the business. And then when DTE eventually brings the power back on, they flip the switch, the system senses that DTE is back on, and then it starts pulling power in the other direction to recharge.
BESS is a private enterprise, so I think you can.
Yeah.
You own it. You own that facility. So you're allowed to use it for your business, and you're allowed to sell the surplus back to
And
the
you
grid.
almost certainly have to have an operating contract, a joint operating contract with DTE. Residential solar customers have to have a joint generation agreement with them.
Right.
Not a stupid question.
You're saying that you gotta have a field solar.
It's not a stupid question at all.
As a teacher, there's not any stupid question, just some that are better than others.
That holds for newspaper reporters too, is my understanding. Most stupid questions.
This is a typo question. On number 7, take the word city out and make it township.
Sorry.
With a solar panel, it's a lot different than just them by themselves.
Number 7,
I think the idea is the solar panel field is.
I'm sure you'd catch it eventually, but
Well, I'll be rewriting this whole thing now.
Do we have anything else? Commissioners? Then I assume this item is closed. Do we have any announcements, general announcements or statements?
Not, our next meeting is going to be on March 26th. It's going to be a busy meeting. There are a number of items on the agenda, so we're going to have Tractor Supply's final site plan. There are 2 public hearings, one for a rezoning request on Haggerty Road. The other is well, actually, we have 3 public hearings because we have 2 zoning text amendments. This one may get canceled. We'll talk about it.
I'm not sure. I'll have
So
this
we'll-
ready for then.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But there are there's one temporary land use permit. Is there? No.
Be fireworks. No, on that one.
No, not on that
We put
one.
them both on this one, I think.
I believe it's a zoning ordinance succession item as well. So there's a handful of things on the next meeting on the 26th. The only other thing I wanted to highlight is, this evening, we didn't broadcast the meeting via Zoom. Our township board has stopped broadcasting via Zoom. We haven't had a whole lot of any participation over the last few months. So so I discussed it with Chairman Cullen. I discussed it with our treasurer. We were going to stop broadcasting via Zoom. If the Planning Commission does want to continue, I would suggest we come up with a better solution for how we do it. The meeting is broadcast over YouTube Live, so we're all on YouTube right now. So, I mean, if the Planning Commission wants to continue it at a future date and offer some kind of virtual interaction, we can look into it and figure out a better strategy than what we were doing. But as of right now, we're not going to be presenting via Zoom anymore.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything? for the
well,
good
I'm
of-
talking about storage containers. If you want to see what they look like, Camping World has got 6 of them in front of their building because I assume they're storing stuff that they're going to move or fix or whatever. But if you see what that looks like, they're two abreast, and I think they're 3 deep, but they're stacked right up. And it isn't what I would want to see in front of something to have to look at. They're cream colored, they're not offensive, but they're just ugly cement
Rectangles.
boxes. Yeah,
Yes.
right.
My only question is, are we hearing still you're in good communications with Chick-fil-A?
They actually just emailed day before yesterday with a set of plans, half the plans. They wanted us to get started while they get the rest of the stuff together. So Brittany just responded to them saying, you know, you don't want us to get started with half a review because then you're going to get comments back from engineering and planning, and then you're going to have to pay for another review. You don't want to start working on half, so we'll wait till you get all the plans together. And they responded that that might take longer. So tomorrow, Brittany and I will actually give the lady a call and speak with her that it'll be more efficient if they get everything together to us in one go so that we can get it reviewed within the time frame. Doing it in bits and pieces actually will cause more delays for them. So yes, they are coming back. There are just too many companies. There's one company doing their civil engineering, one company doing the architecture, one company, multiple companies involved in this. So each person is doing their portion of the drawings and one is holding them all together. So it's
Where's the Chick-fil-A site again? To be? In front of Menards, okay.
Gonna be a busy
Did we
road
ever
road.
find out Jiffy Lube pulled out completely, right?
So, they originally did. We recently had a meeting with them where they're gonna be coming back before the planning commission with a new concept. So, that should be coming fairly shortly.
Are they
Okay.
still looking at the same location, or are they moving off of the B-Rod? Oh, it is. Well, we are underserved. I know that for a fact in our community. So, you know, a lot of people thought I was joking when I said I want to see them come. So,
exact same location, but different company is doing their plans.
oh,
which
good.
is very
Maybe that'll help.
odd, but hopefully they're coming soon. They just collected all the old plans from us. They didn't know that Jiffy Lube had submitted a plan for this site before, which got us by surprise. We are like, but you already got approval for this site. They're like, really? We're like, well, here are the plans. You might want to, like, look at this. You guys already got approved once before, so they took all the plans and made, so hopefully.
Great.
Anybody with anything else? With that, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Support.
I move to adjourn the meeting, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and support for adjournment of the meeting. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh.